I am making a Voiceless Voice deck profile. I am mainly making it because I realized it's been a while since the last Voiceless Voice deck I made. And I kind of started playing it again, really liking it. And this version doesn't have any hand traps, but there are obvious cards that can come out for more hand traps. But overall, I just really like how the deck plays. So starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Low Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Low has the effect that whenever this card is normal or special summoned, you can take a Voiceless Voice continuous spell or trap from your deck and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. If you ritual summon a light ritual monster that has warrior or dragon, Low can be the entire tribute, or I believe that's how it's worded. Yep. And the last effect is, if Low is tributed for a ritual summon, you can special summon her back from the graveyard. And you will use each effect of Low once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. Diviner of the Herald lets you send a... Send a fairy monster from your deck or extra to the graveyard to increase Herald's level by that sent monster's level. And then if Herald is tributed, you can special summon another fairy from your deck. So this is just a thing that you can tribute to then summon Low. And then next, I play 3 copies of Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice. Saphira has the effect you can discard her and then send a for cost. You discard for cost to then be able to send a ritual spell from your deck to the graveyard to then add a light or dragon warrior, or a light dragon or warrior ritual monster from your deck to your hand. And then you can banish Saphira from your graveyard to be able to ritual summon a light dragon or warrior ritual monster. I mean, you can only use each effect of Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. Next, I play 1 copy of Saravis, Dragon Sage of the Voiceless Voice. Saravis has the effect that you can special summon from your hand by returning 2 spells from your graveyard, at least one of which has to be a ritual, returning them back to your deck. And if your opponent activates a card or effect, you activate Saravis' effect, returning it to your hand to then be able to summon any light, dragon, or warrior ritual monster from your hand, I believe. It's either hand or deck. Okay, summon from your hand or deck, and then shuffle it into the deck during the end phase of the next turn. Moving on to the rituals, I play 2 copies of Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice. Skull Guardian on summon searches a Voiceless Voice or a light warrior or dragon ritual monster. And then while you have Low on your field or in the graveyard, Skull Guardian gains additional 2050 attack. And then lastly, if you control Low Prayers to the Voiceless Voice, then Skull Guardian is a once per turn Omni Negate. Then for the supporting rituals, I play 1 copy of Saravis, the Ancient and Ascended, 1 copy of Saphira, Divine Dragon of the Voiceless Voice, and 1 copy of Saphira, Queen of Dragons. Saravis is usually I summon this off of Saravis, but it has the effect that your opponent activates a card or effect that would target a monster you control. You can discard this to negate that effect and destroy it. And this card's on your field. When your opponent special summon a monster, this effect cannot stop anything that starts a chain. So like if your opponent Link summons, Synchro summons, Xyz summons, or Pendulum summons, this can return itself from the field to the hand to negate the summon and banish that monster. As I believe it was a banish that monster. And let's see. Yep. And then Saphira, Divine Dragon of the Voiceless Voice has the effect that... Let's see. If this card's ritual summoned while you have Low Prayers of the Voiceless Voice on your field or in your graveyard, you can draw 2 cards and discard 1. And when an attack is declared involving a light ritual monster that has warrior or dragon, you can discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. And then during your opponent's end phase, you can turn a light monster from your graveyard to your hand. And then Queen of Dragons has the effect that if a light monster goes from your hand or deck to the graveyard, then you can activate one of the three following effects. You can add a light monster from your graveyard to your hand. You can discard one random card from your opponent's hand. Or you can be able to draw 2 cards and discard 1. I really like pairing this with Soravus the Ancient and Ascended, just because your opponent targets a card in your field, you negate it, and then you can rip a card out of your opponent's hand. Honestly, if you don't want to play either of the Saphira Ritual monsters, you can easily just take those out for either 2 more copies of this or even 2 hand traps. But that's it for the monsters. For these spells, I play 1 copy of Blessing of the Voiceless Voice. I realized in testing that I was just being dumb because I was trying to figure out how to recycle one of the cards from the graveyard, but I couldn't figure out how. Turns out I just didn't read Blessing of the Voiceless Voice, which just has the effect to target one of your Voiceless Voice cards that is banished or in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. And if your opponent summons a monster that isn't a ritual monster, you can activate Blessing's effect to ritual summon. Now, let's see. And then the monster that is summoned by the effect Blessing of the Voiceless Voice cannot be destroyed by battle. Then I play 1 copy of 1-for-1. This just lets you summon low from your hand or deck by discarding 1 monster to the graveyard. I say discard it, but you don't discard it, you send it to the grave. Next, I play 1 copy of Terraforming. This lets you add a field spell from deck to hand. Well, then lastly, for the 1-of spells, I play 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster and 1 copy of Pod Prosperity. One thing I like about this deck is that it really doesn't need its extra deck. So Prosperity just lets you banish 6 cards from your extra deck, to then be able to look at the top 6 cards of your deck, add 1 of the excavated cards from your deck to your hand. You won't be able to draw cards for the rest of the turn, and any damage you deal to your opponent is halved. But it is another consistency card. And then Harpy's Feather Duster is just because I tend to lose the die roll, so I usually end up going second. So Harpy's Feather Duster is just in here to deal with pesky back row cards. Then for the 2-of spells, I only play 2 copies of Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. This card lets you ritual summon any light ritual monster that is warrior or dragon. And by tributing light monsters from your hand or field. And then it has a graveyard effect where if a light ritual monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon 1 Soravus the Ancient and Ascended, Saphira, Queen of Dragons, or Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice from your hand or deck, ignoring summoning conditions. Which, that effect doesn't usually get used, but it can come up. So it's nice to have, even though it hardly ever happens. Then I play 3 copies of Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. Barrier makes it that while you control low and a light ritual monster, your opponent's monsters can only target ritual monsters for attacks, and your opponent cannot target light monsters you control with card effects. And then it has another effect during the main phase. You can add a Voiceless Voice card or a Skull Guardian ritual monster from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of Barrier. I just really like this because this makes cards like Infinite Impermanence. Trying to remember some other cards that actually target. It just makes any opponent's cards that actually target can't be used. As long as you don't have any non-light monsters, that is. Then next, I play 3 copies of Preparation of Rites. This will let you add a level 7 ritual monster from your deck to your hand, and then you can have the option of being able to add a ritual spell from your graveyard to your hand. I just like this card because it is not once per turn, and all of the rituals in this deck are level 7 or lower. And then next, I play 3 copies Pre-Preparation of Rites. This will let you add a ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and a ritual monster that said ritual spell mentions in its text. And because it mentions them, with this you can add Prayers of the Voiceless Voice, and then Soravus the Ancient Ascended, Saphira, Queen of Dragons, or Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice. which 9 times out of 10 you're going to go for the latter of the three. And then because I do usually lose a die roll, I also play 3 copies of Ultimate Slayer. Ultimate Slayer just lets you send a card, or just basically your opponent can't activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. It lets you send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, to then return a monster your opponent controls of the same type back to the extra deck. Making sure this is just the thing. Okay, you do have to target it though. I couldn't remember if it targeted or not. Next, I play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This card lets you send any number of other cards on your field or your hand to the graveyard, to then be able to non-target and negate the effects of monsters your opponent controls up equal to the number of cards you sent, and your opponent cannot respond with cards that have the same type as card you send. So if you send a monster, a spell, and trap, your opponent just cannot respond to this card at all. And I realize I forgot to mention it, but it non-target negates a monster's effects, and then also halves their attack until the end of the turn. And then lastly, for the spell cards, I play 3 copies of the Seal of Orichalcos. This card and Terraforming are 4 more cards that can be taken out for hand traps. But the Seal of Orichalcos, I'm just using this deck because I think it's really funny. When it's activated, it destroys all your special summon monsters. But all your monsters gain 500 attack. If you have 2 or more monsters, your opponent can only attack the strongest monster. Which I found out, if you have 2 monsters on the field with the same attack, and it's like if you have 2 Skull Guardians that have 4600, 46 because this is boosting them by 500, and then you having low on your field or in your graveyard, that will make it so that your opponent just can't attack you at all, which I think is hilarious. But the main reason I decided to try playing this card in this deck is because of how you really don't need the extra deck. And then the only other downside of this card is that it can only be activated once per duel, so usually if you've already activated one, you see another, it's just discard fodder. And lastly, for the traps, I play 1 copy of Radiance of the Voiceless Voice. Radiance has the effect that during your main phase you activate one of the following effects. And you can only use each effect of Radiance once per turn, only once that turn. Where you shuffle a light ritual monster that's warrior or dragon or ritual spell from your hand or graveyard into the deck, to then add to your hand or special summon a voiceless voice monster from your deck. And that's other effect lets you target cards your opponent controls up to the number of light warrior or dragon ritual monsters you control and destroy those cards. And then send this card to the graveyard. Which, because that was the biggest issue I had with playing this set 1, is that I just couldn't figure out how you're supposed to get it back, and then I realized I'm just stupid because you get it back by blessings. Or was it blessing or blessings? I can't remember. It's in this very... Okay, blessing. But that is it for the main deck. Like I said, the main 6 cards I can think of to take out would be the Saphira Rituals, Terraforming, and 3 Orichalcos. If you really want to play hand traps, or instead of hand traps, you could also play Odd Eye's Pendulum Graph Dragon. The only reason I'm not is because I can't remember what I did with them. But Pendulum Graph I do know is another good negate because it's a light dragon ritual that you can actually ritual summon and then be able to get a negate with it. And then for the extra deck, I will go and say it now, the extra deck at the moment was meant more for a Dogmatica version of this deck. That it was just meant to basically deplete your opponent's extra deck, which I realized in theory works, but at the same time it really doesn't. Just because they're 2 ritual archetypes does not mean they can actually work together. That is what I have learned. But I play 1 copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight has the effect that if you link summon this card using a monster that is Link, Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz, I think or it could be Ritual too. I don't remember. Okay, now if you use a Fusion Synchro or Link monster to make this card, you can target one card on either player's field or in the graveyard and banish that target. If you use that effect, you cannot attack directly this turn. And then SP also has the effect that when your opponent activates that card or effect, you can activate SP's effect, targeting 2 monsters on the field with at least one of the 2 targets being a monster you control, and then banish them until the end phase. You will use each effect of SP Little Knight once per turn. And then next, I play 1 copy of Dynamondo. I kind of want to put it up to 2. Dynamondo has the effect that this card is special summon. You can target 1 card on the field and a ritual monster in your graveyard. Shuffle both into the deck, and then during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can tribute this card. Then target 1 ritual monster that's in your graveyard, either add it to your hand or special summon it. You can use each effect of Dynamondo once per turn. And then, in the current version of the extra deck, these are the only 2 extra deck monsters that would actually be summoned, with everything else was supposed to have been dumped for Dogmatica things, which I might honestly put a small Dogmatica engine in the deck instead of the Civil War Calcos. Just maybe take those out for 3 copies and a Dear Servant, and then 1 or 2 Fleur-de-Lis, and then a Maximus. But next is 1 copy of Frigid the Barren Blossom. This card is in the extra deck for its Grave effect, which all of these except the last card are only in here for their Grave effects. But this one, when it's sent to the graveyard, you draw a card and then place a card from your hand at the bottom of your deck. Then I play 1 copy of Tri-Brigade Arms Bucephalus II. This card, when it's sent to the graveyard, lets you send another Tri-Brigade from your extra deck to the graveyard. So usually this will send Fergie. And then it also has the grave effect of when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from your graveyard to be able to negate the attack and then, banish your opponent's entire field? I know it's some kind of board wipe. Now be pushed from the extra deck and let you have 3 or more. When your opponent activates a card or effect, when your opponent activates a card or effect when you special summon monsters, and your opponent can't activate that. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card. Also banish all cards your opponent controls. That's what it was. Like I said, I mainly wanted this in the extra deck just because it is a board wipe. And then 1 copy of Meteorologic Aggregator. This card lets you target a card your opponent controls and negates effects till the end of the turn. 1 copy of Herald of the Arclight. This card lets you add a ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand. Who knew it'd be good in a ritual deck? 1 copy of Golden Cloud Beast Malong. This card is just a compulsory evacuation device. See, make sure, turn to the hand. Well, it's compulsory that lets you target any card instead of just a monster. Then I play 1 copy of Cyberframe Lord Omega. Omega's in here just because it's able to put itself and another card from your graveyard back into the deck. So, if you need a card that's in your graveyard and you've already used the effect of Blessing but you can get it with Barrier, Omega can just put that card back in so you can get it later. Then I play 3 copies of Elder Entity Natis. Natis and Herald are the only 2 in the extra deck that can be sent off of Herald of Perfection. Or what was it? I don't think it was Herald of Perfection. It was Diviner of the Herald, I believe it was. This card. Anyway, Natis has the effect that when it's sent to the graveyard, then you get to target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Three copies of Garura. This card just lets you draw a card when it's sent to the graveyard. Which, if I did play Nadir Servant in the extra deck just to get to Maximus and be able to monopolize on getting stuff out of my extra deck sooner, then this is definitely what I would send off a Nadir Servant. And then the last card is 1 copy of Supreme King Zark. This is because in the Dogmatica version, of course it's the Ritual version. This is just in here because it's a level 12 monster that I can use with Dogmatic Calamity to Ritual Summon Albazoa. Which I still think Albazoa is a hilarious card. Just because of the fact that Albazoa can, as long as your opponent doesn't have any monsters summoned from the extra deck, will let you be able to make your opponent send one card from their extra deck for every 2 cards in their extra deck. So if you summon it going first, then your opponent has to send 7 cards from the extra deck to the graveyard. Which, that's just the main thing I liked about the Dogmatica Ritual deck, is that it just takes your opponent's extra deck and can very quickly just send it to the grave. But that is it for my Voiceless voice deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, specifically the extra deck, because I think that's where you need the most help. If you have any ideas to improve the deck, decks like to see made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below. I think one of my friends will end up helping you with a Voiceless Voice versus Mitsurugi video that I had the idea of. Or I had another idea where I was like, what's the better ritual deck? Just have 4 ritual archetypes or decks and see what happens. But like I said, if you have any ideas and you're still here for some reason, just leave a comment if you have an idea. I always read the comments. Thank you for watching.